Hello.
Hello.
So, what are you antagonizing over today?
Just waiting for these guys. It's the last day before the new Borderlands game, so we're just gonna see what the plan is, how to meet up tomorrow, because we don't know if it'll run on Linux, and Funt only plays on Linux, and I don't know if it'll run on Windows 7, that kind of thing. So we're gonna try to synchronize, get everything squared away, and I don't know that we'll play it tomorrow, but at least we'll have it. We'll have all the details down. More like a conference.
Oh, that personally, I cannot justify that expenditure.
Who knows? I might just wait for Steam. I'm not necessarily going to go. I mean, I've been looking at this. The price on Epic, yeah, it's pretty. It's the full price, and so by the time it hits Steam, it'll be discounted. So I might do that.
Yeah, it's roughly around 69 American dollars for me to buy the game.
If you buy the full version, the chaotic great edition, then it'll be 79. But yeah, there's 3 different editions of the game.
No, of course there is.
And I wish there were just another way to buy it. Like maybe I could go through Green Man Gaming or something.
Sailing the seven seas.
Hmm.
uh,
Maybe I'll have to get a PayPal account. I don't know.
yeah, unfortunately, it's Epic at the moment, and Epic is okay and all, but you don't get any of the Steam achievements.
You don't get any of those. You can't gift games to others. There's no wallet cards. It's just so difficult to get anything done over there. That's really my main problem with Epic, is that I can't pay cash for things.
Yeah, the only game recently I've actually invested a lot of money into is essentially Elden Ring, and I've gotten quite a lot of mileage out of that one. There's just so much to do, so much to see. It's such a densely packed world of adventure and exploration.
And Melee.
Well,
Lots
I'm
of
using
Melee.
magic at the moment.
Oh, okay.
And a bit of melee, but yeah, I can run around with a sword that causes rot. I can run around with an axe that causes sleep. I can go around and punch things. I can equip 2 shields and be totally troll. You can invade other people, multiplayer sessions of other people and fight them, or turn yourself into like a statue that crawls around and turn yourself into mimicking something in the terrain and just ambush people. And if an enemy haven't noticed you yet, you get a little damage buff to how much damage you do with the first strike. For example, right? Or you can crawl, or you can stab them in the back, you can stab them in the front. You can smash their head in. You can get your head smashed in. Oh, here's a miracle that allows you to throw lightning. Here's one that sends out a wave of ice all over the place. Oh, curling into a ball, rolling around, and shooting electricity all over the place like a demented Sonic. Because the thing they did is almost every weapon have a special attack attached, a special move attached to them. It can only be used if you have the required stats. But there's also a handful of skills you can put onto a weapon that has no bearing on the weapon type most of the time. So you're from stomping to kicking to jumping sideways. It's so just there's so many options, you know. Right, for example, so here I was running up a hill, and suddenly I was attacked by yellow glowing rotten rats with yellow glowing eyes. They were clearly a bit insane. Then you see a frigging tower further ahead with a giant yellowish glowing thing on top. That apparently caused madness. So you had to hide out of the gaze of that thing until you reached the top and kill the people conducting the ritual, so that you no longer turn mad and then die from losing health.
Right.
And this is a place I've never been before, and it was like, holy shit, something new, something weird, something spectacular, and visually impressive. Yeah, but if you take a game like Far Cry, for example, or Assassin's Creed, uh, Ghost Recon, you wouldn't really come across such awesome vistas and the scenery, because they are trying to keep everything real, copy paste, and fairly realistic and a bit brown. It's just
Well,
a
yeah.
really terrible way to depict the world.
It's always been brown. Dark Souls.
Yeah, but Elden Ring is more green, more yellow, a bit of red, and there's a whole location that is simply has shades of red. And there's a giant underground cave with the glowing lights, with glowing rocks that make it look like the whole place is covered in stars.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah. Yeah.
So in essence, it looks good, everything is customized and has the variation to it. While a typical big ass Far Cry world is usually very much copy paste. But the ironic thing with this is, you know what that is, I can find many interesting things by just walking outside like walking through the town. It's so many interesting things to take pictures from. But in most games, I don't really, you don't really find, in most action games, for example, you don't really find anything to take screenshots of. There's nothing notable to take pictures of while you're traveling. One other game that does that fairly well is Genshin Impact, because everything is sculpted to look unique and interesting.
Right. Well, I have almost 2,000 screenshots from New World. That's how interesting it was in that game. If you're in first person view, obviously. This is why I prefer to play that way. But I made sure to take only the best. And when there was, like, for example, a mission and 75 players were all running across the countryside together, those are some of the best screenshots I took. I mean, what other game can you do that with 75 players?
Yeah,
and we're all
exactly.
from
But
different factions and teams. And the wildlife is running alongside with us because the AI doesn't know who to attack first. So it just kind of runs with the pack until it can single someone out. So you got these mountain lions that are running along as pets just for a few minutes at least. But all the screenshots I took looked like Skyrim. I made sure to have height and depth, and so it's supposed to look like Skyrim when you're playing it. And I agree. A good environment is worthy of screenshots. So I still have them all, and if so that way I can show people if they say, "Oh no, it looks like Path of Exile." Well, no, it doesn't look like Path of Exile. It looks like Skyrim. Here, I could show you, or at least Assassin's Creed.
that
So your
is
characters in front of you.
that is also the thing with Skyrim compared to, let's say, Oblivion, right, or the previous Elder Scroll games,
Hmm.
is that the terrain was just very, very uninspired.
In the older games, especially,
Yeah,
but
for
in New World,
example,
the
I
terrain is
play.
very different.
Yeah, but because in Skyrim it is sculpted
Yeah,
with a
that's right.
purpose.
Hmm.
In Oblivion, it's mainly copy paste, copy paste, copy paste.
I know exactly.
And Daggerfall, oof, that's just boring, empty nothingness, and a couple of preset towns and dungeons that was really complicated with no content in them.
Morrowind wasn't bad for its time.
It's probably one of the few Elder Rings games before Skyrim that seems to actually be somewhat decorated to look interesting.
Yeah, a lot of players loved it more than any of the others. But I think Skyrim, well, the new one that's coming out this year or next year, that's what I'm waiting for. Shivering Isles, or not Shivering Isles. That was already done. That was one of the DLCs to Oblivion. Somerset Isles. That should be interesting to see if Bethesda can pull that off.
Yeah, but still, it's the difference between expansive and empty, and one the skull expansive but sculpted. Because when you design a game, it's just the thing is design, purpose,
Yeah,
making it look believable. And if it's gonna be a big sandbox, you need landmarks, you need unique places. You need to be able to differentiate something from another thing.
yeah, biomes. You need distinct biomes within a game. That's why I loved Subnautica.
Yeah,
Subnautica was a game of biomes,
that's an example of a sculpted game.
especially the second game. Even though the first game was longer, the second game had better graphics. So looking forward to the third one.
The only thing I screwed up really in I had a bit of an issue with when it came to those games was that I managed to drive a bit in the wrong direction, and I had trouble. It was just irritating because if you went off the path intended, you were kind of just fumbling around in nothingness, and just like, god damn
Well,
it.
no, you get eaten by the Leviathan.
But not necessarily. It depends on how far you go.
Hmm.
But the thing is, just not any. It wasn't really good at. I got a bit lost, and I got a bit bored.
Well, the second game is more vertical. there's not a lot of horizontal travel, but there's some obviously, but it's all about the vertical, the depth of the ocean. Stuff is down below, so you got to get your depth modules on, and then there's so much more to see down there. Where the first game, it wasn't really about going deep; it was just wide.
Yeah, you go from section to section. But I accidentally went off the section and somehow ended up in nothing, and it was like, ugh, god damn it.
Yeah, yeah. You don't. That
This
doesn't really
map was
happen
not
in the
very
second game.
useful.
The second game is much better for that. But there are some places you can go far and wide, but they want you to move up and down in the second game more. And so I did it and got all the achievements, and that was that. So hopefully there'll be a third game.
Yeah, they certainly have an art direction and a universe, or at least a world. And yeah, art direction is the key. Oh yeah. The outside of Skyrim, I haven't really seen a more interesting open world than Elden Ring. Sure, Genshin Impact has a big open world, but the issue there is that the treasure chests are kind of boring.
Hmm.
Because it's a gacha game, and pretty much all of the notable equipment you gain from pulling the slots and getting, and the game spits out stuff. All the things you get in a chest almost all the time is stuff you just use to level up the 4 and 5 star items to make them useful. So in essence, while the world is fun to explore and such, treasure hunting becomes more of just a necessity than anything else.
Right.
While in Elden Ring, I'm just hunting down treasures because it's fun. Oh, look, I found a unique weapon. I now have 2 balls I can equip to my hands with spikes. So now I can run up and punch a giant in the balls. Oh, and here I found a harpoon. Oh, this is a giant anchor I can use in melee.
That's kind of neat, yeah.
Here's a shield with spikes that looks like a face. Oh, now I can dress up like a mushroom-covered man. Yes, you can turn yourself into a fiendish fungus fellow.
Fiendish fungus fellow. Nice.
And pretty much anything you see an enemy use as a weapon or wear on their person, you can unlock somehow, somewhere. Or a variation of it. So yeah, there's a reason why they have this meme called Fashion Souls.
Merch.
Yeah, so you find, for example, you find this NPC with a big giant mage hat and a flowing white robe and fur on the shoulders. Suddenly, once you do the quest, suddenly you find loot in a place next to that NPC, and now you can dress up like that NPC.
Huh. Okay.
Or if you want to look like a generic faction soldier, you can just beat them up enough times and eventually they'll drop all the armor pieces, weapons and shield. Now that's very cool. Essentially, if a humanoid enemy wears it, so can you. Even
So you
if
can dress
that
up as a
humanoid
guy.
enemy happens to have have a big bulbous head and is albino and pudgy, you just unlock it as some sort of mask you wear.
You talking about Daniel?
Well, essentially, put it this way: if he was an enemy in Elden Ring, you would be able to find his face somewhere to wear as armor.
I can't wait.
And then you could invade other people's games as Daniel. And that's why Elden Ring is so damn good. They just have the things you just thinking is an adventure. And here you murder this boss, and suddenly some changes happen to the world map, and you know unlocked yet another place to visit. Oh, you went into some caves, and oh, where the hell am I now? Oh shit! I think I found another boss. I wonder if this is going to be interesting to see if Tiny Tina's Wonderland will actually become even remotely close to any of the other experiences they have.
Well, from what I'm seeing from the players so far, the quality of life and gameplay is vastly improved. So all that remains would be the story, the length of the game, end game content, that kind of thing. But I'm watching some videos. I was watching this morning, and it delivers on the the action of the game, for sure. There's a lot more strategy. It's not all tactics. Like in Borderlands, if you're in a group with 4 players, one player can go AFK and not tell anybody, and basically the rest of us wouldn't even know. But in this game, you have to work more as a team. There's strategy to it. So, for example, I mean, Tiny Tina might say, okay, if everybody crouches for 5 seconds, I'll give you all some damage bonus. Well, if one player's AFK, they won't do the crouch part, and then the rest of us are left without our damage bonus. So it means that you have to be present. That's just an example. I don't know, but you all have to be here. You can't just kind of treat the game like a pick up a weapon, hold the fire button, and that's the game. You have to actually work with the team, and there are spells that you cast now. Instead of grenades, you have spells, and they work with your weapons and your stats. So it's more build oriented. So we'll, like, after a battle, we'll take a break, we'll throw down our weapons and decide who should have which. All right, well, you're the spellcaster, so you should have this particular ring to wear, and I'll take your shield or something. Which I like. I like more of a thinking cooperative experience than just do whatever you want. Pew 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 pew.
Hmm. Yeah, I can certainly see that. Still, we'll see how it turns out when it comes to how fanatic people will stick to it.
I think you'll always have your Borderlands fans. I mean, even Borderlands the pre-sequel. I'm glad I had it. I'm glad I bought it, went through the game, experienced the whole thing, and even though it wasn't the greatest title because it lacked replayability, that was really its problem. It was so linear. There was no end game content per se. So once you finish it, there's not really a lot of point in farming weapons either, because what are you going to do with them? Now, for me, it was to try to get all the trophies and stuff, as you know, but so I had a purpose.
Dun dun dun.
But most people couldn't give a crap about trophies and achievements, so that sucks for them. But this game, I think that this Wonderlands is sort of Gearbox's gateway experiment to Borderlands 4. And Borderlands 4 is set to release sometime in the next year or possibly year and a half.
Yeah, but it seems they have cut down on the pop culture references and all of that,
Right.
and all of that the bull crap.
Possibly, yeah.
I saw someone review the game, and so far it is at least promising from a gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching. I have one video I found that's about an hour of gameplay with no commentary. I like those because that way you can decide for yourself what you think of it. Well, that's what I posted in Discord in the Wonderlands channel. So I think the YouTuber there spends a lot of time on the character creation, so you can kind of just skip past that part. And then
Meanwhile, my solution is watched a review from this fellow that calls himself a G-man.
okay.
Yeah, his thing is he he reviews and plays through, or rather, he plays through and make videos about first-person shooters mostly.
I say.
And when I say mostly, I mean practically every Every video he has is some sort of first-person shooter from God nowhere. Games I haven't even heard of before.
Oh, it's always good. New games to try.
It is the GG man. He essentially
Let me guess, you didn't like it.
oh, he liked it, but just some of the games he reviews is like, that was a game. Well, I never heard of it.
Maybe they're fake. They're not really games at all, but his fantasy games.
Oh yes, like Probius. Was it Probius? That game everyone thought I heard of, but
It's a good name. It does sound like you've heard. It does sound like familiar somehow. Probius.
yeah, his channel is called G-Man Lives. But no, yeah, he's reviewed amongst other things. Tiny Tina. He also made a video about Ghostwire Tokyo. It seems to be a bit of an odd, interesting one, where you're running around in this weird alternate version of Tokyo after something happened, and you are turning things and you're fighting with magic incantations and hand gestures and such.
Right.
Fighting mythological creatures. But yeah, Crossfire X, Far Cry, Doom, Duke Nukem, a couple of weird ones that write memory.
Max Payne.
Yeah.
Probius. Oh man.
Hmm. This was his. I don't. Yeah, it's not exact name, but it was like this arcade game that a lot of people seems to be very sure they have seen and played, or at least saw in an arcade somewhere. But yet it doesn't exist.
It's funny.
Like the whole thing with the Bearstein bears.
Yes, the Mandela effect.
Yeah, it's like the Bearstein. Hell if I know.
It doesn't exist.
It exists, but it was just that the names were a bit is I don't know about the pronunciation. If somebody say they have seen it with Steen, others means I have seen Stein.
It's a big stain on the media itself.
Yeah. In the end, though, it's interesting how weird such things can get.
I know. The Mandela effect is a pretty neat thing.
Ain't no rest for the wicked.
That's the theme song to Borderlands 2.
Yeah, it's kind of neat because it's an actual legit song with lyrics. It's just not something just random bullshit made up that you can't find on a playlist anywhere.
Yes, like Probius. Man, I'm still glad that we're still playing Borderlands 2. It's such great staying power.
It is the same thing that keeps people going back to Diablo. It's the whole loot and build aspect.
Yeah.
Is very enticing.
I find it the same with Path of Exile too.
And even more so if people are allowed to mod the game. I can mod it. It gets even better.
That's a good point. See what happens with modding with Wonderlands. I don't really mind the whole modding thing anymore. I did when I started. I was just so purist. But I've come to realize if the developers have no problem with it, then why do I have a problem with it? Who am I?
You know what keeps Blizzard games so popular and long-lived?
What?
The ability to do whatever the game does in the creation with the creation tools they provide. The only so that's why. But Overwatch is not going to have the same longevity as the other Blizzard titles. Because just because it can't, you can't add it, you can't make a custom. You don't have the scenario editor.
Yeah.
Because it's the map mission creation tools that made MOB, for example, made Dota a thing in the first place, you know. Because people could program incredible things with a tool, we make incredible things with a tool at hand. Meanwhile, the same thing is also kept Age of Empires 2 alive until it eventually got renewed and revived with better AI and such from the developer side. And they get an
Right.
update because the ability to mod it and edit and make custom things to it kept it alive and showed that there was interest, so that some developers were willing to pick it up again and work some more on it. However, if you don't allow the community to do such things, you have no community. And whatever product you made is probably going to go into obscurity eventually, or just lose all the players. Because
Yeah.
always online, you always need this and that and stuff to. There's always a caveat to how you can play the game. A live service can only stay a live service as long as the servers are alive. But servers are expensive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have communities that don't allow any modding, like Destiny 2. Bungie forbids it, and if you get caught modding, you're out.
Yeah, but Destiny 2 is an online. It's an always online experience, so that is a bit of a different. That's a bit of a different beast.
Yeah, it's an MMO. Same with New World, or hopefully Ashes of Creation. I'm looking forward to that MMO. I think everybody is. But Ashes of Creation is slowly becoming like Star Citizen. Not wondering what's going on with it.
The developers saw stars and now they have gone blind.
Something like that.
Star Citizens, no, that is a that is a tragic mess.
I know.
Glad I never invested any money into it. What?
Some other games like Star Citizen that we were waiting for. Some big epic. Well, hopefully not epic, but giant open universes.
Yeah, it's you can hope, you can dream. You're allowed to scream in panic.
I wonder if Firefall still works locally. If those files are still viable.
If not, there's probably some way. There's probably somebody who made it possible to play it despite the game having no service anymore for before original experience.
Yeah, I still have it installed. I should try to launch it. Play locally. Could you imagine? I could like make videos of it and still play against all of the AI enemies, the bandits. Get the glider pads and everything. Slot machines. That would be awesome. The thumpers.
Yeah, if somebody, but I'm not sure if anybody cared enough about the game to actually do that. Though. For example, you have one game people care a lot about. That's the whole. Was it not Earth and Beyond? It was that.
Beyond Good and Evil 2.
Oh, not Planet Side. That was the first person Battlefield style game.
Planet Side 2 just got a new update. Maybe Guild
It
Wars?
was that you land on you land on the colorful planets and find ships and do stuff and build some stuff. Shite.
Oh, yeah.
I just forgot what the hell it was called.
You mean No Man's Sky.
Yeah. Because the mods made everything there so much more interesting. Like removing a lot of the bad game designs I implemented.
Yeah, I still want to get into No Man's Sky. It's just after playing these massive multiplayer games and having a world universe that's big like No Man's Sky, it's huge, but you can't really play with other player. I mean, it's more like just your Borderlands, 4 people at a time. I want to play with hundreds of people at a time. If I'm going to be in a place that large, it should be populated with players.
The issue is that planets are more or less kind of infinite in size also.
And even though they look different, it's really not anything that different. It's just a different shade of purple this time, or
Yeah,
orange.
it has a handful things it goes back to. So there's like two types of enemies in the game. You have the drones that goes around and shoot things if you piss it off, kind of a bit like the police in GTA.
Yeah.
And you have the crab faces. That essentially is just one specific assets of enemies that when they have this feature, they are aggressive. And there's maybe like one or two at the planet, two of that species at the planet, and a handful of other randomly generated weird creatures.
Right.
But they didn't really make any dinosaurs, for example. They never got around to make, for example, proper dinosaurs. I don't think there's a thing. I haven't seen a single T-Rex in the game,
I don't think so.
or a
Yeah.
Brontosaurus, or any such thing.
No.
So, but yeah, I had some fun with that mod here and there, and suddenly I could also fly underwater. And actually collide with the terrain of the game. Instead of just skimming across the surface at a not scraping your paint off the mountainside height. I also got rid of the terrible sound of the AI voice they included.
Yeah.
And completed.
Oh, it's a units received.
Yes. The worst offender was the performance. It was bad. So sure, they have improved it by a lot at this point, but game is still a bit. Uh, it's expansive but shallow. And the whole base building aspect did not impress me much.
Mm.
In essence, last time I checked, you went to you have this designated location, and then you have a ring around the location you can build modules on, and to certain degrees customize and stack them. And that's about it, really, when it came to the whole building stuff.
Right. Although it's fun to sit there and wait for Class S ships to land so you can take them, buy them. You just watch ships come and go all day, and when you get a good Class S, then you can make an offer on it. That actually was kind of a neat concept. Very GTA-like, where you find a car parked and then you can steal it. But at least in No Man's Sky, I don't believe you steal them. I think you
Oh,
actually
your
buy them.
trade.
Trade, that's it. Yeah.
The ironic
But
thing, though, is you
fun.
find a high security world, you find out, oh, it has some of the most valuable resources around, so you just plunder the world, then you have money for everything you could ever possibly want. And most of the ships you will randomly find crash on the ground, so you can just reclaim them and rebuild them.
Right.
So if you walk in far enough in a straight line, you will eventually find a new spaceship anyways. Sure, the concept and everything works, it's just... It's... it's just missing something. One game that ironically I find does this fairly well, that is Minecraft.
Yeah.
Which is 100% customizable. Almost nothing, you never know what you're gonna find. Almost everything is unique. Not to mention that it keeps having content added to it.
I know. And you can get those skins that make it look like Skyrim or whatever. You don't have to stay with the blocky graphics.
Yeah, so one of the latest I heard when it came to updates for that game, they included uranium ore.
Yeah.
So you can make toxic armor.
Nice.
There's the whole fact that they at some point included ability, you know, to get down to fight the Ender Dragon itself was just amazing. Essentially, they gave you a sort of end goal for an infinite adventure.
But there's an ending to it when you kill the dragon, right?
Yeah, you get at least a credit roll if nothing else, and an achievement. But it's not a Steam achievement, so
It's a Mojang achievement.
yeah. So then they essentially all the achievements are set to the world you're currently in.
Yep. It's not fair. It's not fair, I tell you.
But still, it does it fairly well. It's too bad that the forest is a bit more on the jank side when it comes to making caves interesting. Just a bit too dark and a bit boring.
Mm.
Rather, it's
But then
that you
there's
can't see anything underground.
but there's those 3 hidden underground temples or something? Shrines?
I'm not entirely sure. But the interesting thing people often don't realize with the forest, it is it's quite a bit uh, like Subnautica in that it is a big world, but it has limits and there is an ending. There's a goal.
Yeah.
But keep in mind though, reaching the goal in the forest is very hard. Mostly because the final boss, he is not kidding around. However, the thing that really impresses me with the forest, even though it is a bit janky and feels a bit half-finished, is that you have is the enemy, how the enemy acts. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the forest.
Only what I've seen you guys play.
Well, in essence, right, the enemy has it's a very dynamic, and the different tribes of crazy cannibals on the island, or not on the island, but in the forest, those react to stimuli and different interactions and such, and they have lots of behaviors. For example, some of them will bow to you when you start using explosives and subjugate them through the sheer shock and awe.
Right.
And of course, they also, at the first, they will carefully probe your defenses and will leave maybe one or two. And later they will start running around in patrols. And suddenly you will find one of them just, oh, he started to learn to climb, he's suddenly climbing trees now. And they will also run away when injured, and you can sneak up on them and they can detect you and such. It's not just the typical brainless, no survival instinct where the enemy runs in a straight line and then they keep hitting you until dead, or they are dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Creeper.
That is so much more fun. Just so much more moody and immersive than having just brain dead enemies that does only one thing and then they die. And if the developers really put a lot of effort into it, the enemies does two things. Or other than walking and attacking and which is one thing FromSoft have really done a decent job of when it comes to their games. They have actually put in the time and effort to make sure enemies have at least three different, almost every enemy will actually have three or more things that they can decide to do against the player.
Yeah.
For example, take the generic dried up undead zombie thingy, right?
Yep.
It can, so they can grab you, they can slash, and they can run at you. And some of them have a different combination of between different amount of attacks in a combo.
Huh.
So, for example, here I'm fighting this what I just call a flying monkey. It slashes you like mad, but it will also jump backwards to disengage. And sometimes if you overstay and try to fight it head on for too long, it will just headbutt you. Interrupting your you from preventing you from, you know, just spamming the attack button.
Yeah, I haven't played too much of it myself. You know,
But you see, that's one of the things that made Elder Scrolls, what made From Software games so damn popular. It's due to the enemies actually being interesting, engaging, and they are fun. They have cool and interesting designs.
yeah.
They are engaging and they have a lot of variety. Plus, you know, you can customize your strategy to fit whatever insanity you want to achieve. Be it archery, magic, stabbing it, and knocking it down with the hammer. If you and that is admirable from so many points. The only other game I find that does this almost as well is Dragon's Dogma,
Oh yeah.
which add one more element to it by being able to chop off body parts and climbing enemies.
Huh.
While having having this thing called having this NPC character called a pawn following after you, you can hire from other Steam users. And then it will go around saying, "Sir, wolves are weak against fire."
Hmm.
But it still allows you to customize your characters and build and do many different strategies in order to defeat enemies. Such as you have an ability that allows you to put yourself on fire. So you can now climb a phoenix, and you can climb a griffin,
Mm-hmm.
climb onto its wings while you're on fire and losing health, watching and just prevent it from flying away because the wings have burnt to a crisp. It can no longer fly. It has a couple of other interesting interactions, such as if you have a lightweight small character,
Mm-hmm.
they can harpies can pick them up and fly and lift them off the ground. However, if a character is heavy, they will be unable to pick you up.
Ah.
Well, because you're heavy. That's also what makes those kind of action RPGs so damn fun. It's all of the odd mechanic interaction with environments and enemies and the strategies and all of the stupid shenanigans you can pull off. Most first-person shooters, for example, or most MMO games, have a severe limitation on how much absurdity you can do. Because in the end, it mostly turns into optimizing everything in order to get the best result. Take Diablo, and I take World of Warcraft, for example, right?
Uh-huh.
There's only so much silly stuff you can do in the game before your characters become practically useless and you will be incapable of doing raids, for example. On the other hand, you have Diablo that allows you to, just like Dragon's Dogma and From Software games, you can customize pretty much whoever you want and get amusing results. One of the game series they made before, I have made several games in before they ever did Elden Ring. That's the what Armored Core series. It's a bit poorly optimized, but it's a series of mecha combat games where you could customize their mecha for every mission, optimize it, and change stats and weaponry, changing up how it feels and acts completely. Sure, to some degree you can do this in Borderlands as well. Just by the fact that they have 3 different trees, which makes the action skill behave differently. And the bonuses you get in combat as well, even if there's some limit, it's still a customizable that makes it so enticing. Sure, it's probably dumb as all hell, but I'm sure there's a video of somebody trying to complete Borderlands 2 with that cursed pain into pain stays in Spain weapon.
Right. Well,
I don't remember what it's called, but the one that goes la 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 arriba arriba while it's shooting, and you have
yeah.
absolutely no movement speed.
Banshee or something. Yeah, that's a pain in the ass weapon.
Yes, but I'm sure somebody has made a stupid YouTube video about completing the game with only that weapon.
I'm surprised no one's tried to finish Borderlands 3 with the first gun that you get from Claptrap. He
Well,
gives you your first pistol. It's a
I have
Moloko.
seen someone completing Borderlands with only the death trap. So in essence, he had to wait for the cooldown for the mecha to come off cooldown and summon it again.
Right.
Oh right, it was called Bane.
The Bane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Let's see. Borderlands 2 Bane. Oh, God. Can you beat Borderlands 2 with only the Bane?
No,
Alright, if you played Borderlands
cannot.
2, or even any of the Borderlands games, you know the guns can get pretty wacky. Wacky doesn't always mean good, though. And today, we're going to be using everyone's favorite cursed weapon and answer. Can you beat Borderlands 2 with only the Bane? Alright, like
Yeah. Somebody made that video, indeed. I'm not entirely sure, for example, in a new world, how much you can get away with doing something like that there. Oh, actually, the same man made a video. Can you beat Borderlands 2 with only the starting pistol?
Oh, there it is. Okay, so someone's won it.
Yeah.
With only the Bane.
Yeah, he's one of those YouTubers who his whole content library is stupid challenges in games he likes. So yeah, playing through Borderlands with the most shit gun ever. Or rather, pure cancer, I suppose, is a better word. I mean, one of the reasons I just couldn't go back to playing Borderlands is I found it running around too damn slow. That's the reason why I couldn't be asked to play Borderlands 2 anymore, because it takes I feel it feels it's too floaty and slow, really.
Well, character development games, leveling games where you level up and assign skill points are always going to be slow.
Yeah, but I mean, you walk too slow, you run too slow, you move too slow. It takes too long. I don't have the patience in that game to to run between the locations to get the next spot. It's just like, is it? It's I just like, why do I bother running between to this camp and to this camp?
Because it's something to do while you're waiting for the golf ball to stop rolling. Uh-huh. Hey?
So yeah, I tried it the other day and see if I could get into it, and it's like, nope, I just don't. I find I find the movement too excruciatingly slow.
Yeah. Well, Wonderland seems faster, at least in the videos that I've seen so far.
But yeah, I don't know what it is. I just so many games, but I just found Borderlands to be movement to be too damn slow. It's like, I don't have patience for this. Yet there I am playing Elden Ring. But it does have the benefit of most loot being interesting and weapons not being completely random junkum half the time. That is the only unfortunate side effect of games that has a lot of loot. Which is randomized, is that weapons become highly expandable, and since there's no way you can improve them, you just toss them away or store them for another character once they become obsolete. Oh, you like this sniper rifle you found? Well, oh, it has shitty stats. It's obsolete now. If you're lucky, the game will drop you the same type with only better stats. Eventually.
Of course.
Once in a blue moon. Ironically enough, though, one of my favorite games when it comes to first-person shooters really is
What?
Blood.
Oh.
It's brutal, it's janky as all hell at times, but it is fast and it's fun, surprisingly fun. In essence, build engine games like Duke Nukem and Shadowrun and such, they are just more they're more fast-paced action. It's also more satisfying to crush enemies. That does help. Because Blood have some amazing voices for enemies when they die, and you see blood everywhere. Because they put some real effort into making sure it was satisfying to croak some crazy cultists. It goes around saying, "Pro granado sorbet." I even
Yeah.
made gave them a custom-made crude language to make them sound even more crude and crass. A crow granado sorbet. And then they scream loudly when they
Sound
die.
muted.
And there's different ways to mutilate them. But yeah, it's fun to see how absurd it can get.
Which one now?
For example, like I mentioned, this game Blood.
Yeah.
As for some reason, all of these old first-person shooter games is just really it's just they were just a lot more faster movement-wise, even if they were more clunky when it came to interface and such.
Yeah. I remember.
Well, even Unreal is a fairly fast-paced game. And you come playing Borderlands and just the gunplay, shooting things is okay, but it feels like it should be a bit faster in the move when it comes to moving around. And the jumping feels like it takes for ages to land.
Well, it depends on the gravity. Some worlds or some locations have low gravity, especially in Borderlands 3. So you are floating more.
Yeah, but the base gravity in Pandora is I find it a bit irritating, to be honest.
Well, you can do a butt slam and come down quickly.
Yeah, that was a great addition to making movement more more interesting. You know, in Borderlands 3, the whole sliding, butt slamming.
Right, and they had butt slamming in pre-sequel. That's where it started.
There's also the reason why it became harder to go back to Borderlands 2, because it lacked, it had even less movement options, even if the story is so much better than those damn annoying influencers and incompetent heroes, because the
Right.
writing team is just bad and they uninitiated in the art of writing a good story.
Well, they're saying the reviews on Wonderland saying that the writing has improved over Borderlands 3. So that's, I guess it'd be hard not to.
Exactly. Essentially, it is like the stories when it comes to movies, like the latest, such as the latest Star Wars movies and such, right? Or much of the things to do with the new Star Trek. There's a lot of good ideas, and some stuff of it is interesting. And on the other hand, it lacks a bit. It feels like everyone is a bit dumber than they should be. Characters feels a lot more incompetent and feels a lot more incompetent considering the fact that, especially that the main cast is supposed to be on a frigging spaceship.
Well, that's where your writing comes in. These guys are making hundreds of thousands of dollars writing crap. So if you can do better, then you should be able to make money too.
Yeah, I know.
That's the fun part.
But still, it's the same thing with Doctor Who. It just becomes more, as the longer they keep doing the same thing over and over again, it seems the dumber the franchise becomes. Characters just become dumber and dumber, and then new writers comes along and they just sacrifice all characters because they don't know what to do with them anymore.
Exterminate, exterminate. Yeah, I stopped watching as soon as we left the Gamers Haven. Daniel had me watching all the episodes, and I still know exactly which episode I saw last. It was the one in New York City. They go back in time to New York City, and but that was a good episode actually. But yeah, I didn't see a reason to continue watching the series after Daniel gave me the boot.
But yeah, like I say though, there is something to be said for when it comes to writing and how well you can pull it off.
Right. Well,
And the reason I bring up Borderlands as an example is because you're familiar with it, and it just pissed me off so much at how stupid the characters were acting. It is no, oh no, the evil woman who has siren powers can drain other people. Oh no, Maya is being drained.
it was Lilith, but yeah, I get your point.
And it's just like, I know you already written yourself into a corner with the whole being able to teleport around.
Yeah.
But having a character who you played through the previous games, murdering droves of bandits on Pandora without any issues, from big size to small size to anything in between, only to be manhandled by someone that has showed up practically out of nowhere. That doesn't even have remotely the same skills, while the player characters is not even a part of the damn cutscene. I mean, you're literally there in the room and you can't do anything. You can't even influence the action.
Right.
You just
I hear you.
become a bystander in amateur play. And that don't impress me much.
No, I met some players and who had said that I met some players in Borderlands 3, and I'm still friends with them on their Discords and things. And they had never played Borderlands 2. So they didn't really understand what a good Borderlands versus a bad Borderlands game. They never played 1 or 2 or pre-sequel. They started with 3. And I really tried to like 3, and there were great things about, like, for example, the Battle Royale, the arms race add-on. That was cool. It made a lot of sense
Yeah,
to
it also
have
had,
a Battle Royale.
mechanically wise, it had a lot of good things going for it. Plot wise, it was ugh.
Plot-wise and lengthwise, it was so darn short. Even the DLCs were longer. I think if you add up all the DLCs, the game, it's longer than the game, or at least gets close.
And ironically enough, though, there's one thing I find with the game itself is that it might not be so very long, but it certainly feels long.
Yeah. It feels long because it's repetitive, and that's the thing I liked about Borderlands 2 is that there are things they do that make it not repetitive. For example, they doubled the number of rarities. So instead of 5 rarities, you now have 9. And so that makes it a lot more interesting. So your legendary items are not the best thing to have anymore. There are things that are better than legendary, but even though they're very hard to find. There's rainbow, there's pearlescent, uh, there's seraph, sort of a pink color. So there's all these different rarities now that join the originals and helps to mix it up. Well, in Borderlands 3, they went back to the original 5 rarities: common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary. Nothing else. And legendaries drop so often in Borderlands 3 that they feel like common items. You don't have to pay attention to the other ones. Purples and blues, don't even look at them. In Borderlands 2, legendaries have to be farmed from certain bosses. So purples are always a keeper, and the blues are always worth a look until you find that legendary eventually. And that's what I like, is that rare loot should be rare. And in Borderlands 3, I don't know what they were thinking. I know why they did it, actually, but it
It's
didn't
because
really matter.
players like me, don't have patience.
Well, maybe that's part of it. The real reason they did that is that they have what's called anointments now on weapons. So weapons can be geared to particular classes. So you can have a legendary that's particularly for the siren. Well, so they have to drop more often, because if it didn't, then you'd almost never get the anointment you need. So the idea is that you still will have a hard time finding your anointment, but we have to drop the legendaries much more often so you have a chance at getting the one that's for your character. Interesting thought, but to me, I didn't really care about anointments. I just saw all these orange guns on the ground and said, "Oh man, this isn't fun anymore."
Yeah, like see, um, I have a friend of mine who is, Pale. He is very, he is the kind who likes to min max and spec and spend a lot of time to theory build and all of that. And he is very bad at throwing away things. Then comes me and like Borderlands. This gun is mediocre. Nah, nah, nah. Running along. Whatever.
Right.
This one isn't. I'm not. I just can't. It's just like most of the guns is like, why do I even care about this one? Away it goes. Whee! Out the window.
Or you can sell it. I mean, now money is so common that it's not even worth your time to sell it. At least in
Yeah.
Wonderlands, money is rare, or more like iridium.
The ironic thing with the way money works, though, is that and how the item drops works compared to currency. It
Mhm.
makes currency practically pointless to certain degrees because all of the good stuff you find by just opening a chest. Every now
Right.
and then you might find, for example, a good grenade mod in the store.
That's what you're looking for. There were certain names you were looking for, and the store would have them. But in Borderlands 3, there's a famous grenade that everybody wants, cloning maddening tracker. But yeah, other than that, money is really pointless because there's too much of it floating around.
And the only thing it's being used for is pretty much to buy ammo and respawning. Because you lose money when you respawn. There just isn't any big things to use the money on. It's the same thing issue I had with what was it calling it? Oh yeah, Kingdom Come. Which has the unfortunate problem of being realistic.
Mm.
However, that means I have I will have one very big issue. There is very hard to get better equipment if everything is realistic and you already lugging around full plate mail, a pole arm. It kinda doesn't work quite as intended. And you have over 5,000 silver because you have more money than a lord would have at the time. But there's absolutely nothing to spend the money on. You buy a horse, fair enough. What's now? Armor? Well, I just kill some enemies. I know how to have an armor.
I know exactly.
And it's like, oh. And that's about it, really. It just becomes a bit redundant. A bit of a shame, really.
Yeah.
So I found, but then again, Kingdom Come suffers from a lot of being a bit half finished, I would say.
They did come out with patches for it, several actually. The graphics were very good.
Yeah, but combat, for example, sure you start out as an incompetent peasant with no combat skill whatsoever. That's well and all, but they somehow managed to not make pole arms quite official in the skill tree and any such things when it comes to leveling up. Yet you can find pole arms just fine. But you can't carry them into town, and you can't store them anywhere. So you I just drop it outside of town and walk into the city. And when I go out again, I just pick it up again. And there comes a new, here's a plot-related cutscene. Well, I'll just have to drop the pole arm before the cutscene starts, and then pick it up again afterwards. Make sure I have it in combat, so I can stab stuff to death with a long pole.
That's pretty cool.
Because I have learned one thing when it comes to medieval warfare. A spear is king. Pole arm is king because it's a long stick with a sharp pointy end.
But you remember from Age of Empires, it's a rock, paper, scissors. So the pole arm is only good against some enemies and others are good against the pole arm.
Of course, that's the generic fantasy idea, is that sword beats spear, spear beats horse.
And the horse beats sword. It's got to be in a circle. Yeah. So each weapon is good against something, but weak against something. Strong and weak.
But the irony of this system is that it's not quite representative of how it actually works. For swords is a sidearm. It's an emergency weapon for close range. So you would generally equip, though it seems like you generally would equip the soldiers with a spear, a shield, and a sword. And if they can't use the spear, they will just use the sword.
Right.
So eventually the pole arm just got a lot of iteration depending on what they were fighting against and what decade of the medieval period and place we were talking about. But in the end, the spear was the most. A long stick with something sharp and heavy on the end is the most common, cheapest, and most used stuff in at all you could have. It's just knights with a sword. It's just swords. Has a bit of more that personal duel potential. Or epic story about defending his family with his sword, because that's what he had in the home.
Oh.
Because the hero goes up close and personal. And iron strikes iron. And they look each other into the eyes and then they strike. You can go lunge for the final strike. Doesn't sound... meanwhile, they stood 2 meters apart, jabbing at each other with a long pointy stick. Doesn't sound quite as dramatic, you know. As, sword against sword, shield against sword, the clean metal against bone and wood, smashing, tearing. As he cleaved the enemy in twine. Or cleft enemy in twine.
Sure.
Yeah, you see, it's a bit hard to, remove body parts by stabbing. I think that has a lot to do with the whole logic of swords instead of spears being romanticized. Because nothing sounds more mighty than two warriors clashing and then lobbing the head off the other ones with a mighty cleave.
I know. Spears are just going to stick somebody.
Yeah. You poke someone at a relatively safe distance. It doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the same dramatic story flair to it.
No.
He threw the spear and the enemy died. Ooh.
Yeah, Excalibur wouldn't have been so interesting. Polearm.
Yet Viking mythology had a spear. Odin had a spear that would always hit the target and return. It was a bit the same with Ku Klux Klan or whatever, however it's pronounced, from Irish mythology. He had this spear that could always strike true. But by far, swords are the most depicted and popular armament in stories.
Yeah, longsword specifically. They're heavier than most people realize. You can't just like pick it up and start swinging. They're really heavy.
What some people also don't quite realize is that to some degree is a Japanese, the standardized Japanese sword is also pretty much it's a long sword. It has roughly the same size and functionality. It just curved due to the crunching process.
Yep, folding over and over and over again.
Yes, but it's also due to the way they are crunching the hot iron afterwards, which curves it.
Right.
But it's still a long sword you can hold with one or two hands that cuts things up close and personal. Or should I say, it's a sharp piece of iron that cuts stuff real good.
All right, let me see what time it is. It's for 2:30. I should probably have my lunch before I gets too close to dinner.
Maybe you should. Well, I know what time it is, and that is adventure time.
All right, I'll be back.
I'll see.